will protect the working poor. It was the only thing that will protect African Americans and Latinos in California. What we found is that more than half of borrowers tend to just take a payday loan because the location was right there. So that proximity and that clustering for African American and Latinos is really critical. Having them in communities makes people more likely to just walk in and take a loan.
Daniel Brooke, in addition to writing your piece, Usury Country in Harper's, you've written a book, The Trap, Selling Out to Stay Afloat in Winner Take All America. And I'd like you to talk about how these payday loans fit in with the bigger story, especially a story we did last week with Reverend Jesse Jackson, and that is the story of student loans.
Yeah, in The Trap, Selling Out to Stay Afloat in Winner Take All America, I look again at this rising economic inequality in the United States, this growing gap between rich and poor. The Trap focuses on a different group of people. If payday loans are for the lower middle class or working poor, we might say, The Trap is about college-educated professionals. But it argues that this increasing gap between rich and poor poses problems for this group as well, which, of course, compared to the lower middle class is of course, relatively well off. And the choice it imposes on the upper middle class is not whether or not to take out a payday loan, but whether or not to sell out, whether or not to do a job that will pay them a lot of money, but in which they don't believe, and which will both sort of hurt the country in that they're not doing something more service-oriented, but also make them feel like they've sold out. So student loans are a big part of The Trap. As we've shifted towards a privatized system of higher education, relying more and more on debt and more specifically on bank-issued private debt, the debt loads of students who attend both public and private colleges, and particularly professional schools and graduate schools. And the University of California at Berkeley, which is ostensibly a public school, charges $25,000 tuition for its law school. So that even students from public schools are emerging with large debt loads. It ends up dictating career choice to a very disturbing extent. I think it's one of the things that drives a lot of the troubling trends in our society politically, including the revolving door in Washington, where people who had, say, worked in a congressman's office on issues they believed in turn around and triple, quintuple their salary by going to K Street and lobbying.
Now, perhaps with the economy and even these blue-chip law firms laying off so many of their associates, maybe there will be a trend in the other direction, or at least volunteering at public service law firms and law groups like Legal Services and Legal Aid.
Well, yes, Amy, we can certainly hope that as these jobs dry up, people will do other things. But I think we need to take a more systematic view of the problem. I mean, just by having these jobs dry up, people with large debt loads are just going to default on their student debt. I think we really need to rethink how we fund higher education in this country. Again, and going to the Center for Responsive Lending platform for a 36% interest rate cap. Again, I think that would be great, and we should, Senator Durbin has a bill along these lines that Thomas Gagan, who wrote the companion piece in the April issue of Harper's, mentioned earlier this week on this program, passed that bill. But what my article tries to do is create a larger context and show why people end up going into the payday lender. Things like health care reform, where if someone's child gets sick, it doesn't put them into the red. Something like increased, better public transportation, especially in Southern California. If your car breaks down and you're working poor, you go to the payday lender, and you know the public transit is often inadequate to get you to work for a week until you get your car fixed. So we really need to take a much broader look at what kind of country we want to be if we want to address these problems.
Daniel Brooke, I want to thank you for being with us. He has written in his article, Usury Country, Welcome to the Birthplace of Payday Lending, in the latest issue of Harper's Magazine. His book is called The Trap, Selling Out to Stay Afloat in Winner Take All America. And we also want to thank Gina Green for being with us, from California, spokesperson for the Center for Responsible Lending. New report out today on payday loans, and we'll link to it at democracynow.org. We'll be back in a minute.